When I first got this device, I was like, whoa. And then I played with it a little bit and I was like, oh gosh. And then they updated some firmware and I was like, In this video, we'll look at some problems with this device, but then also look at why this could be one of the best budget, large screen, retro gaming devices under $100 on the market today. And before we get started, I just want to thank GoGameGeek for supplying this device. They've been very supportive in supplying devices. The nice thing about the Trimui Smart is that Trimui aren't selling direct. So the only place you can get this are places like GoGameGeek and I think Powkiddy are selling them, but they're all the same price. I do recommend GoGameGeek because their shipping is quite quick and affordable. They supported me, so you should support them. So the key features is it is one of the best designed devices in the retro space right now. It really is beautifully designed, and we'll look at that just now. It arrived to me without production ready software, and I was quite frustrated by that because, as a reviewer, I don't want to be a tester. I want to get the device as a consumer and test it for you. So I want to get it consumer ready and then test it before you get to use it. So that was a bit frustrating. However, I did get to say to them, look, this is wrong, that is wrong. And me, along with a bunch of other people who were sending reports through, they have fixed a lot of these issues. So that isn't as much of an issue now as when I started making this video. And their intention behind this device, you can see that this device was intended to be a sort of consumer level, all-in-one package. They use their own proprietary software, which again, pros and cons. But the intention behind this device, with the LED lights and all that, they've definitely gone for something that's going to appeal to a consumer. It's not the highest performing device, got a nice big screen, which is going to appeal to most people. You can see that the intention behind this was just to make a really special device for consumer level users. And then that 4.96 inch display. So 5-inch display. I'm going to call it a 5-inch display for the rest of this video. It's a 5-inch display and it is pretty damn good. The resolution I'll put on the screen now, and it is a pretty decent resolution. I would say it rivals the Powkiddy X28 quite nicely. And if you are looking for a large screen, fairly budget device, buy it now. All right, so a quick hardware run through, just like the main points, is there's a lanyard hole here. If you want to attach a lanyard to it, you can. This is a power saver mode. I thought this was a turning off the rumble and the LED lights on the controls, but it isn't. It actually reduces the performance. So, if you're playing Game Boy or whatever, you can switch this on and save some battery life. This, I think, is to allow for more Wi-Fi. This is the DC and data USB port, the mic, which I don't think is actually usable, SD card for all your ROMs and actually RetroArch settings and that sort of thing. Audio input on the top. We've got a host, which is for external controllers. We've got the power button. We'll talk about the sleep mode just now because it is very good. Volume button, also got some issues there, which we'll talk about just now. We've got our right and left trigger buttons, which they have made these really small trigger buttons, which someone was complaining about it, but, at least they're stacked and they've compromised on the length of these for Pocketability, which I appreciate. I think they're fine. And then overall, you've got this matte finish, which I really appreciate. It's really nice to the touch, and there's just these refinements. Like Trimui, I've developed a proper logo and it allows for some really nice branding on the device, which makes it feel like a consumer level device. You've got the branding over here, and then obviously the logo follows through. And that logo follows through to the startup menu as well, which is really nice. When it starts up, it's got the Trimui logo and it just creates this sort of unified, nice consumer level feel, which I keep saying that consumer level thing because what I'm saying is, a lot of these devices feel like hobbyist, whereas this feels like something I could pick up at a chain store. And then the dreaded shake tests. For some reason, it causes a lot of drama with people watching my channel, but I like to just shake the device and test it. Now, there's a fair amount of rattle, but the worst part is that knocking sound. Now, that means that the battery is loose inside here. The Pocketability test. So I'm going to do this and affectionately call this the crotch time. So there you've got it. It does look like something is hanging around in my pocket there. These are slightly baggier pants. And then let's compare it to the Retro Pocket Flip. So here's the Retro Pocket Flip. It's quite a bit thicker. And there's definitely more of a bulge with this one. There's definitely a bigger bulge there. And then flared shoulder buttons. And again, I just think Retroid, they have struck the perfect compromise with this, because that is just less of a bulge. This is bigger. Let's do that. This one is bigger. Sure, not by a lot. So they've managed to fit that big screen on there. Anyway, I think it's a tie between this and the Retro Pocket 3 Plus, which is actually saying a lot, because we all went on and on about how pocket-friendly the Retro Pocket 3 Plus is and how well crafted it was and cleverly crafted it was. So I don't think us reviewers are singing the praises of this device enough in terms of its pocketability and all that. And then let's quickly do a little weight comparison. 230.7 grams, Retro Pocket 3 Plus, 282. We've got the Retro Pocket Flip coming in at 270. This is nice and light. The X28, which is obviously massive. Powkiddy RGB 30. 205 grams, obviously much smaller screen. So make of it what you will, but I just think a weight comparison sometimes is interesting, because a few little grams do make a difference in these devices. And then to give you a reference, if you are a Nintendo 3DS fan, that's 230 grams. Almost identical to a 3DS. My overall test, so that was more of an overview. So what is my rating for this? Is like a overall build quality versus ergonomics versus everything. And I would give it a 3.8. So the competition is pretty stiff these days, and the reason I give it a 3.8 is because the battery is rolling around inside there. Otherwise, this is a near perfect device. You'll see there are a few little strange issues which also give me a little bit of caution on this device. So like I said, this is almost identical to the 3DS Dpad, a little bit bigger than the 3DS, as you can see in this picture. But dome switches here, and I like the fact that it's a bit bigger than the 3DS, because the 3DS D-pad is quite small. Dare I say, this is better than the 3DS, and it is a very nice D-pad. It's dome switches, which is something like it or lump it. I quite like the directness of these dome switches on here. You know, if you're playing a platformer like this, it is actually quite nice. Whoops. It's not ideal for fighting games, you know, like the typical Street Fighters, but, you know, this does follow suit to devices like the PS Vita, Nintendo Switch, the Retro Pocket 3 Plus, and the 2s. And like I say, it's a small D-pad, but it is growing on me. Actually, I've been playing it now for about a week, and I'm really enjoying this D-pad. Just to demonstrate this D-pad, so because it's so direct, there are pros and cons. So it's not as fluid as a membrane D-pad, but I do have that direct feeling of I'm pressing the forward and the up button together. I know they've clicked in, and then I get the direct feeling, okay, he's pointing the gun up or diagonally down. I do feel like I have a little bit more direct control in these situations. So even though it's kind of weird at first, even if you are into these classic membrane-based D-pads, this is something to enjoy. And if you're a first-time user, you won't even notice the difference, but it is nice. And if you, like I say, if you're into the PS Vita or the 3DS, this will feel very familiar to you. So I was actually going to say that this is a bit of a problematic D-pad for fighting games, but after a little bit of fiddling and testing it out, I actually got to do all my moves with Ryu on Street Fighter 2. So here I am doing those moves, and you know, it takes a little bit of effort. It's a little bit of a different experience to using the membrane D-pad, but I got it going quite nicely. The action buttons are low profile, so let's just get a shot there. So this is a more retro style device, and you've got some pretty decent travel there. And I gotta say, you know, I've been testing this now for about a week, like I said, and I'm kind of like, I've gotten used to these and I really enjoy them. Now going back to that retro action button, I'm like, yo, that's kind of inefficient. You know, this is just nice and slick and quick and direct. So there's something to be said about dome switch action buttons. And I kind of wish the Retro Pocket 3 Plus had these, because the dome switch D-pad plus these would have just been a match made in heaven, I think. Shoulder buttons. So these buttons, they register press throughout the travel of the device. So that's very good. These R2 and L2 buttons were too squishy. They are no longer too squishy. They are going to remove some of the deadening in there so that it's not so much of an effort to press these. That being said, now that I've been using these for a week, they're already wearing in, so they're already feeling better. Some people are complaining about the fact that they're small. Okay, I have skinny fingers, but again, I think it's something that you will get used to and appreciate because now it's really pocketable. Okay, so let's talk about these analog sticks because there are some issues here. So firstly, they're great. When you first get them, it's got the glows with these lovely LEDs, and it's got good rubber grips, like really nice rubber grips on the end. And they look pretty cool and they feel really nice, like they got a very nice motion to them. But I think they have recessed these too much in the device. I don't know if this comes as a unit, the way it is, but when it first arrived, so they've had to fix this in software. When it first arrived, I had to calibrate it numerous times. I reached out to Shem from Retrobreeze, and Shem, it's either yes or no with that guy. And he was like, I hate this thing. I hate these analog sticks. It's ruining the device. And I kind of agreed with them, but now with the software update, it is a little bit better. I just think there was an issue. I had to calibrate these sticks a number of times. So if you are having an issue, calibrate them, but don't push them too hard to the extremities. So just give them a gentle sort of wiggle around and you'll get a good calibration that way. But that being said, since I've got the new firmware and the new SD card patch, it's working quite well. When I was playing F-Zero on N64 with this, the joystick does have a pretty strong switch between going right or left and registering to the bottom. So the switch between there and there on the software is very extreme. It's quite sudden. So if you're playing a racing game and your thumb kind of drifts slightly down, it won't suddenly slow down. The car will just suddenly stop moving and you realize, oh sure, but I need to press this way to turn. Sorry, not slow down, turn. And then suddenly the car's not turning anymore and it's because your finger drifted slightly. So that is quite like an extreme thing on the software, and I don't know if they can dampen that in a later update. Other than that, the range of motion is limiting, but at the end of the day, with the chipset that's in here, you don't notice it that much. There are going to be some games where you feel like you need more range of motion in the joysticks, but again, a compromise was made for Pocketability. On the shoulder buttons, I don't feel like it was a critical compromise. On the joysticks, I do feel like they made too much of a compromise in that regard. But maybe with some firmware updates, we'll get to just them being perfect because they are really nice as they stand. I think I saw one reviewer was like, they feel like nubs, and they do. But it's nice and streamlined, and I like that about it. There's no L3 and R3 again, and I think they might have gone with these because of the LEDs now that I think about it more. So there's no L3 and R3, and I do feel like in the end, little white-capped switch-style joysticks would have worked better, but these definitely do look better in the device. So, pros and cons. So our function buttons, we've got a menu button that works throughout the system, which is excellent. And then we've got start and select. Nice dull click, which I really like compared to something like the X55 where the clicks are just atrocious. This is a nice dull click, and apparently it's a nice improvement from the Trimui Smart. And then again, I want to talk about this little switch. So there is no literature or any information. It says FN on it. Now this switch is a performance switch. It switches for battery saving, but then also drops the performance of the device. So if you are busy playing PSP, for instance, which this thing can do, it won't be able to play PSP when you put that switch on. So for instance, Retro Game Core did that in his video. He did a whole test. I feel so sorry for him. And then the switch was on and he didn't realize. And that is because there's just no information about this. And so for him, N64 wasn't working. And it is working. It's just this jolly switch that no one told us about how it works. So if you do get this, it's not working according to plan. It's probably that switch that's on. Okay, so audio. So there's the first thing that I want to talk about. It's an issue. It's an issue. I put the device went into power saver mode and my volume was completely down. And then when I came out of power saver mode, I've got music. And So whenever you go out of a game or do something that kind of resets things a little bit, the audio goes back up, which is frustrating. I had other times where the audio just dropped to 0 for no apparent reason. And then that brings me to my next critical issue. I don't know if you're going to hear this. Now, that isn't an issue here with traffic noise and all sorts of things. But if you're in a silent room, if your loved ones are sleeping and you're playing this and you put it on silent mode, there's still a buzz coming out. And that brings me to my next point is I did a bit of an inspection. So when I first got this, I thought the audio was coming out the back. So there's the audio. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the right-hand sound hole. Now I'm going to go to the Dpad. What I can tell you is on sort of inspection, my ear's over that sound hole here by the Dpad. Then I move my ear over to the Dpad. If anything, the sound is coming out the Dpad just as much as it's coming out that little hole. So because the hole is so small, it's not letting enough sound through and it's resonating through the rest of the device. So like I said, if I put my ear here, it sounds like the audio is coming through the back. Then I put it here. I'm like, oh, it's much louder there. Then I put it by the sound hole. No, it's definitely coming through the Dpad more than it's coming through the sound hole. It's a strange thing. Now, it's not really going to bug you that much because it is mostly coming up towards you, but it is resonating out the back way too much. And so as much as I love to go front-facing speakers are the future, this device is not fully front-facing. It's very strange, and I'm going to do a teardown later to prove me right or wrong there. So the standby mode is excellent. I put it on standby when I went to bed, and then it was at 84%. When I woke up, it was 78%. And I've been leaving it on standby. I've been using it for a week, and I would say I've charged it fully, just left it to charge maybe once. I've put it on charge for a little bit once after that, but that's it. So the standby mode really is working on this. It's actually shutting down the device, doing processes and stuff in the background. It's not just switching the screen off. So I'll put the battery stress test on the screen now and put my commentary in text. So if you're listening to the audio, just check the video quickly on information about the battery stress test and how long it lasted. I'll also put information about the battery on the screen now. So connectivity, there is Wi-Fi on this device, but currently no artwork scraping, which is a bit of a misstep on their part. They really need to enable that in the software at some point. You can do NetPlay with this thing, which is kind of a misnomer because how many people with the same device are actually going to be around in the same place and play NetPlay? But it is available. So I haven't really looked into that too much, but it is available on this device. And then I also can't find any information on their spec sheets or whatever, whether it's got Bluetooth. Maybe when I do the teardown, I can see if there's a Bluetooth chip in here, but currently no Bluetooth support that I can see. It does have data input here. You can transfer your ROMs via this little data thing. And then if you do want to do an external controller, you can plug it in there. So if that is something that you are into in terms of consoleizing it, there's no HDMI port and you cannot Bluetooth controller this. So quickly, just to rehash everything that I've said over this video regarding ergonomics. So we've got the round edges, just like a PS Vita, which I love. It really feels good. And then we have got a compromise on the L2 and R2. You don't need L2 and R2 a lot with this device. Like even with PSP, you're only going to use the top two for actual gaming. These you can map to shortcuts and that sort of thing. Or you can map these to the gaming, whichever you like, but that would be the most practical and useful. So that's not a big issue to me. The matte plastic adds a factor to the ergonomics. It really feels nice in your hand. These joysticks, I've kind of gone in and out with these in terms of whether they're great, but they do feel nice in terms of ergonomics. Again, these buttons are a soft click, a dull click, which feels really nice. And the dome switch is something to get used to, but I've really grown to enjoy it. So if we compare it to the Powkiddy X28, now they are both 1280 by 720 screens, which means this is a 4.96 inch display. This is a 5.5 inch display, which means you've got a higher pixel density, so 1280 by 720. And so you are getting a higher pixel density on this screen. So you're technically getting richer colors, better detail, all that sort of thing. So And I would say, honestly, I can't notice the difference, but this is definitely a brighter screen than the X28, which I kind of enjoy. And the colors are definitely richer. I find that this has got a richer color than the X28, but both are great screens. You're getting quite a lot for your money in the Trimui Smart Pro, and we're going to compare it to the X55 at the end of this video. Okay, so let's run through this firmware, because this is something unique. There's not anything out there on the market like this. It's a Trimui OS. I would like to see a custom OS by somebody, like something like Garlic OS or Onion OS on here would be really nice. Sure, Onion OS on here would just be like the cherry on the cake. But this is a pretty good operating system. So we start here, we navigate with our right and left buttons. And these are favorites. So you can go through, I haven't created any favorites yet, but that's how I would recommend using the system. Once you kind of make it your own, is to make some of your best games, your favorite games, favorites, and so that you can go here and just pick up on those. I kind of lose track of games. I get sidetracked on other things, and then I come back and I go, oh yeah, I wanted to enjoy that game. Then recents is nice. So this is also a great way of using this device, and maybe that's why I haven't used the favorite section, is because I can just pick up where I left off. I can go, what did I use the other day? And play that game. And there you'll see again, because you can't do the scraping, I now have to go find the artwork. And I would say just a recommendation is to use scraper.net, SKRAPER.net. And there are quite a few tutorials already on how to do that. I think I've made a few in some of my videos, but just how to scrape the artwork and then put it on this SD card. It just needs to be labeled the same label as the ROM and put in the correct folder, and then you will have artwork if that's something that you're into. Then the best is collections that you can make. So you can go, so this is quite interesting. These are the all-in-one cartridges that came out on the Famicom back in the olden days. So I could actually probably find one. Okay, it's not all of them, but it's some of them. And then there's a collection of Pokemon games. There's all the Pokemon. Oh, my son will love this. So yeah, that's quite cool. And you can go on the SD card and create folders of games. That's basically what it is. Here we have all the systems. Now you press, I think it's select. No, that's for search. That's a new feature. Start. There we go. So you can either have I think they call this the flow, or you can have the grid system. I've set it to the grid because I want more things visible on my screen. And check here, as I go through the systems, the LEDs change color. That's really nice. So USB storage, this is where you would go if you want to plug it in and then, move things about on here in terms of ROMs and that. NetPlay, here's where you would look for other people on your network to do NetPlay, and actually show on this user guide how to do all of that stuff. And there's a few odds and sods, but like I say, there's a few things like that switch. What is that switch? Just give us a diagram with all the little things so that we know what the hell is going on. NetPlay. And then all the settings. So here, I haven't found a shortcut for brightness yet, which is not great, but you can set the brightness here, and you can actually turn the LEDs off here and here. And then you can also turn the brightness of the LEDs down. So if you feel like they're just too bright, you can turn them down. And also for saving battery on that. So I'm going to put it in medium. Volume, obviously you've got your volume buttons. Background music volume. So it's set at 10, and it's not that noticeable actually, the background music volume. And the music isn't as sort of gaudy and in your face as the RGB 30 with Powkiddy, but I've actually left it on because it hasn't bothered me up until now, but you can switch it off there. Wi-Fi, switch the Wi-Fi on here. Themes, only one theme at the moment. Key map, this as well I haven't been able to figure out, because even when I do this, everything seems to be working the same way. So I thought it would rotate the key so that you can do the vertical gaming mode. Maybe it's there for future updates, but here's really where we want to get into it. So you can power off, you can set the language, you can go into NetPlay, you can refresh your ROM. So when I put new ROMs on, I just went in here and said refresh ROMs. Factory reset, so I actually did this. I changed a bunch of settings. I was trying to fix a few things when the firmware wasn't working very well. And then I just went to factory setting. I reset to factory settings just to see how it arrived and see if I made any difference with my changes. So that's where you would do that. Calibrate joystick. Now, again, my friend Shem at Retrobreeze said to me, don't calibrate. But this has now been calibrated with the new software. It's not moving around very well. It's a bit jittery, but I just left it. And it's working well now with the latest update. So there we have it. So there's the internal memory. We've got 37 gigabytes of internal memory, which is strange. And there used to be a place here where you could change the performance. So you could change the CPU setting in here, but they've taken it away. I'm not really sure why. I can't really see a negative of allowing people to set their CPU. So here's what I would do. I would take their games cards. So Anbinic have been using Kioxia a lot, which are actually decent SD cards, so you don't really need to replace those anymore. But when you see these blank ones with 64 or 128 written on them, format a new card and add everything that's on here onto the new card and just put this aside somewhere because these ones are really bad. I haven't had too many issues yet, but I wouldn't trust these. Now, I'll put on the screen whether this is FAT32 or exFAT because you need to format it to the correct format. And then I would say just replace this SD card and put your own ROMs on here, because if you are outside of China, the ROMs card is definitely set up for the Chinese market. Maybe I got a Chinese version. Let me know when yours arrives if it's better. So I started off with a bit of PSP. This is kind of the ideal screen size and form factor for PSP. Unfortunately, we're not going to get the best PSP experience. Colin McRae 2005, but Assassin's Creed, even though that's an easy game to emulate, we got some major graphical anomalies. It played normal speed, but I couldn't play that. I left out God of War Chains of Olympus because it's just not worth playing on this device. It's too slow. Crazy Taxi kept crashing. GTA Chinatown Wars is an RPG style game, so it's very slow moving, and that played well. I didn't have audio, but that might be an issue with my ROM. Star Wars Lego 3 played well. Mega Man Power Up played well. Outrun 2006 played okay at 1x resolution with audio stutter. Sega Rally plays well at 1x resolution. And I must mention that 1x resolution doesn't look great on these devices. We're stretching the image onto a larger screen and a higher resolution screen than the original hardware. And so it just accentuates all the flaws of that image. And so you really want to be playing these games at 2x, 3x resolution on these emulators. And I'd say if you want an affordable PSP emulator with a nice big screen, I would recommend the Powkiddy X28. And then Dreamcast, the same story. I wouldn't buy this device for Dreamcast. It can play the Dreamcast games, Sonic Adventure 2. There's a few games that I played on here, but I wouldn't buy this device to get Dreamcast performance out of it. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this in terms of the performance. And then just to note, I had to disable the rumble for the Dreamcast emulator. This happens on a bunch of these devices. I had to go into RetroArch settings, input, and turn the haptic feedback down to 0. Otherwise, you just end up with it vibrating constantly. N64, we are getting better gameplay here, so I would say you're going to get pretty decent N64 gameplay. Now, this is where a device like this, and we've had issues with devices like this in the past, we've got a lovely 16:9 aspect ratio screen, but there aren't a lot of systems that can actually take advantage of that. So you're going to get a few PSP games like Tetris and that are going to play, but for N64 is more like a box aspect ratio, and it does play quite nicely on this device. I'm also not having a great time with NDS, Nintendo DS. I actually had better performance before all the updates. The problem I have is just getting it to work nicely. I find NDS much nicer on Android-based devices because you can touch the screen, you can map a bunch of buttons to different things, you can map the buttons to swap screens. Also, you don't have the clickable joysticks on this, which I often use to swap the screen for NDS. And so I don't recommend this for NDS. And this is where I say that a 16:9 aspect ratio screen, even though it's lovely, doesn't really make sense on a device like this, because what you really want this for is GBA, so that's the closest you're going to get to 16:9 on here. Mega Drive, NES, SNES, PS1, which is also a box aspect ratio. I'll put the aspect ratio on the screen. And then arcade games. And so GBA is probably the nicest on here because of the 16:9 aspect ratio. But don't let that deter you. It is a lovely screen, and you're going to be able to stretch some games, like some Dreamcast games. You can do the 16:9 hack on some of the games. So you're going to get away with it. I don't want to overdo saying, 16:9 is terrible for retro gaming devices, because it's also a big screen. So they've compensated for that by just giving you a nice big screen. So let's do that teardown to see what's happening with that little battery that is jumping around in there. I know they are adding a heatsink, which might squish the battery into the body. So we might get saved with that, with the production units. But let's just have a look inside. It snaps off quite easily. Well, quite a satisfying little click to it as you open it. So the Wi-Fi aerial is actually here. So let's have a look at this. I don't really see what's there, but it doesn't look like there's anything here. So I wonder if they were planning an SD card reader and just decided against it. Not sure. There's even a Trimui Smart logo on the CPU, on the motherboard. Well, that's interesting. The rumble motor seems to have been stuck somewhere and now it's come off. So who knows where it was. Must have been on the body somewhere. The battery is not that loose. So I'm not sure that was actually the battery that was knocking around in there. All right, so let's see if we can find the speaker. So the speaker is supposed to be here somewhere. Like that is just a hole and that is a hole. There, you see what I mean? There is no speaker by these holes. So where is the speaker? Where is it? Okay, so I switched it on. I was cheeky now and I switched the device on while it's all open. And the audio, just like I suspected, is emanating from the joysticks. So I'm just going to remove one of these joysticks. So the lights come from the side and they emanate through this rubber membrane. Okay, so I've located it. The audio is coming from here, from this little box. The audio is coming out here. There's these little slots here. So if we open this, there's quite a lot of distortion coming out of these speakers. So they're pretty bad speakers. And yeah, it's just a pity. It's quite bad audio. So for the price versus performance versus this lovely big screen, this is kind of on its own in the market. The closest competitor is $30 more on GoGameGeek is the Powkiddy X28. Now this is one of my personal favorites. I really like this device and the reason for it is the screen. It is a lovely screen, even just going through the menu. Look how nice that is. It's a really, really nice screen. I really like the way it renders everything. You can put shaders and stuff. It can handle that to a degree. And so you're getting a very nice experience in here. A bit of a tinkerer's device in terms of it's got Jealous on it, which is a custom firmware. It's got this beautiful big D-pad, so that's also it's got going for it. The one huge downside, the one Achilles heel of it, are the clicky buttons. Function buttons. So that is the only issue I have with the X28. Class-leading ergonomics, and it's not pocketable. But so this is more pocketable. This is more pocketable. It's got those compact shoulder buttons. It's got the dome switch action buttons and the small D-pad, which some people like it. I quite enjoyed that. I'm quite looking forward to having this on another device at some point. I enjoy that. These joysticks, even though they don't have L3 and R3, they glow and look cool. It is a beautifully put together device. It looks really good. And so I think the two versus each other, obviously this is $30 more. And so when it comes to price, this is definitely a no-brainer. And that also makes it a lovely gift for 2023. So I think this is one of my top gift picks for 2023, the Trimui Smart Pro.